Hello and welcome to our premiere episode, East African Voices. I'm your host, Laban Clifton Serio, here in Nairobi. This is a look into the East African community integration process, the milestones so far, and the challenges experienced in enhancing a fully integrated region. We have traveled across the 5 countries, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi, to bring you up to speed to this integration agenda. In our shows, we speak to policy players, the private sector, and the citizenry at large to get their feel on this East African region growth renaissance. The East African region has been touted as among the world's fastest growing economic hubs. With its central location on the continent playing as an advantage, the East African region has presented low-hanging fruit to investors both within and without the continent. A population of over 140 million people, a GDP growth rate of 6% per annum are all numbers that point East Africa as an economic magnet.
We've seen intra-EAC trade grow by over 26%, depending on how you calculate it, the fastest growing on our continent, if not in the world. We have seen foreign direct investment more than double over this decade. And the quality of this trade is mainly in manufactured products, unlike trade with the rest of the world, which is in raw materials.
Forming the East African community, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Burundi have made headway by signing joint protocols that assist in unlocking the region's economic potential. So far, the community has signed the Single Customs Union, the Common Market Protocol, to pave way for the Monetary Union and ultimately the political federation of member states. This 4-point agenda presents a roadmap the 5 countries are embarking on to spur economic growth, create jobs, and curb poverty levels. To ensure that this growth potential is tapped for the benefits of member countries, key issues stemming from the signing of common market protocols must be resolved. It is imperative for the East African Community Secretariat to be at the forefront in ensuring execution of policies by member states. Further, the 5 member states have to rise to the occasion to champion for the growth of the private sector, which is instrumental in unlocking the rich economic potential lying herein. Governments and private sector at large need to engage so as to generate a competitive and effective business environment. All these spell the focus of East Africa's first TV show that gives an in-depth look into the integration prospects. East African Voices takes a pulse check into the progress made so far after the signing of trade protocols. We travel to all the 5 partner states as we gather the sentiments of the private sector and the populace at large to question on the headways and challenges in the integration agenda. We start off by a brief history of the East African community. Right since pre-colonial times, the East African region has always been united. This was brought about by the sharing of key infrastructure such as the railways and ports, reminiscent by the East African railways and harbours, the existence of the single currency and common tax system.
I was privileged, I think, to be appointed the first Ugandan permanent secretary in the community in 1967. And I worked there until 1975. You could go to Dar es Salaam in the morning, from there go to Nairobi in the afternoon, and evening you are in London on East African Airways. It was a wonderful experience to have. And you were controlling the whole of East Africa. Both medical and natural resources research institutes were under the community. So really it was a very good beginning and a promising beginning.
A community that lived through the test of colonial rule and attracted interest from both East Africans and colonial masters. Interestingly, the same sharing of infrastructure, common currency are all aspects that are at the focal point in the current EAC protocol. The collapse of the cooperation that was experienced back in 1977 turned the cards on a region that would have been the present day's European Union of Africa. Divergent views, Uganda's iron arm rule, and a lack of a common goal were all aspects that contributed to the collapse of the first East African community.
What really caused the collapse of the community was, apart from the fact there was those inherent complaints about the unequal distribution of benefits, there was also the Cold War. I told you there was a Cold War where some of the powers were concerned, like the British, the Americans, were concerned that East Africa was becoming socialist, was becoming communist. When Amin took over in Uganda, that now caused a very serious problem. The community authorities could not work because Mwalimu Nyerere, who was the president of Tanzania, said he cannot sit together with a military dictator at the same table. But then the three presidents of Kenya, Kenyatta, Nyerere, and Obote, comprised the authority of the East African community. And it's only the authority which could approve the budget. So if they could not meet, then there was no community budget. An organization cannot operate without a budget. And as they were struggling to see how this budget can be approved, which was not really going very far, East African Airways, and to service its debts. And the servicing of the debts was to be financed by the three countries. The problem is that for the time when there was all that wrangling, National Bank of Kenya was advancing the East African Airways money to sustain its operations. So at the end of it, the bank will not keep on waiting to be paid or advancing money. So they decided to ground the planes.
On the 14th of May 1984, efforts to begin in the mediation process kicked off with the signing of the mediation agreement. More than trying to resolve the cause of treaty dissolution, the agreement was to look at sharing of common assets and liabilities.
I remember the most delicate assignment I had as the foreign minister was to chair the first ministerial commission that was charged with the responsibility of jump-starting some kind of cooperation between Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And when we gave our report to the then Presidents Ali Hassan Mwinyi of United Republic of Tanzania, Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, and President Moi, everybody looked very excited. It did not take long before we went back to Arusha.
In 1994, efforts towards the rebuilding of the East African community began through negotiations with the international community, and in the year 1999, a new agreement was signed by the then presidents of Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. On the 30th of November 1999, history that will shape the future of the East African community was made here at Sheikh Amri Abid Stadium in Arusha. It's at this podium that President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the current president of Uganda, President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, the former president of Kenya, and the President Benjamin Mkapa, the former president of Tanzania, signed the deal of what is now the East African community. A decade and a half on, some of the benefits that were realized after the signing include:
we've had a customs union since 2005, and beginning this year, we are moving into a single customs territory, which is a tremendous achievement in only a few years, I can say. In 2010, we managed to sign a common market protocol. The common market is now operational, and it's moving on well. In 2011, 2013, we concluded negotiations on a monetary union protocol, which has a 10-year roadmap to a single currency. And this monetary union protocol is currently undergoing ratification by all the partner states.
These are all aspects that East African Voices will follow to the detail. So what lessons can East Africans learn from the collapse of the initial EAC to ensure that this does not happen again?
The leaders have got a responsibility to ensure that they continue to cooperate with one another or each other to realize the benefits of integration and transformation of a regional setup like East Africa. Without political will, you can't achieve much. So they owe us, the heads of state, that strong determination for us to achieve the benefits of regional integration and transformation in our development process.
Over the next few weeks, East African Voices takes on a deep dive into some of the region's initiatives that have been introduced to spur the growth of the region. On infrastructure, for a region that is a net importer, the port infrastructure is of immeasurable value. We look at the efficiency of the port network. Right from the port of Mombasa, we probe on the time it takes to clear goods at the port for timely delivery to other landlocked countries within the region. We also look at the Mombasa Port Charter and what this promises to investors going forward. As of the port of Dar es Salaam, plans to expand the port of Dar es Salaam are underway to achieve an added carrying capacity. On logistics, we follow the cargo right to the national highways, the Central Corridor and the Northern Corridor alike. How easy is it to transport cargo from the ports to specific destinations across the member states? This translates to the overall cost of doing business through added transportation costs. We get a feel from the private sector.
Once the vessel arrives in Kenya and is charged, within 24 hours, you can load your container on truck and go. While in Tanzania, you will take minimum of 3 to 5 days, sometimes more.
We are going to have the electronic single window system, and we are having this TANSYS for the same reason that we want to simplify the clearance process. And I believe that if Mombasa, they are not going to be much more keen, all the importers of Rwanda, they will use the Dar es Salaam port.
Seeing how focal these two ports are, we speak to the private sector and government officials alike on what it will take to increase the efficiency of the port network.
There's no reason why it should take 2 or 3 days to clear a container in China. And it can't happen here. I mean, there's no earthly reason why it shouldn't happen. It's an organizational issue, and that's the issue we must address. And you know, and there's no reason why our ports cannot compete with the ports in Singapore, for example. I'm not saying it should happen tomorrow, but certainly that should be the target. If Singapore, such a small country, is able to be so efficient in their port operations, why can't our countries do the same?
We need to build the infrastructure that will enable us, what I will call the first-class infrastructure, that will facilitate that trade. But infrastructure is not sufficient in itself. In addition to that hard infrastructure, we need to work very closely on the soft infrastructure, on making sure that we are facilitating trade between all East African countries.
The core of the program is to assess, question and cause action among policy players to ensure that East Africa lives up to its billing as among the world's fastest growing regions. We're taking a commercial break, but stay with us. We have a lot more lined up for you. Welcome back. In our travel across the 5 member states, some key issues arise which the community should embark on addressing if this growth prospect is to be realized. Here are some of the highlights of those we picked up. Non-tariff barriers identified as trade impediments other than tariffs have also contributed to the slow mobility of goods from the ports.
We have managed to eliminate cumulatively 72 non-tariff barriers. 22 are still outstanding, and which is unfortunate, 8 new NTBs were reported, but we are moving further from that. In terms of developing our mechanism, we have developed a bill which is now giving the legal weight in terms of elimination of NTBs. The bill specifies legal actions that have to be taken in case a country takes too long to eliminate, particularly those which have been there for a long time.
We will pay a close attention to the numerous roadblocks along the central and northern corridors and weighbridges. We will also speak to informal cross-border traders who account for over 70% of trade volumes within the EAC.
Those people who are responsible for making sure that we have formal trade within East Africa should go and talk to the customs officer and get all the prices of everything. They just need to go and keep on checking and see what is the price now, what is the price where they're going to sell it. And if the price which they are going to sell it, there is a profit margin of 5,000, can we leave for them 3,000 because there is transport so that we take 2,000? I think there we shall move. But if you are taking everything and you want me again to lose my capital, and I must leave, one thing that we should understand is a person must leave.
Wakati wakubwa, watu wa serikali wanapanga vikao Arusha, wanapanga vikao Nairobi, Kampala, Bujumbura, Kigali. Hawa wafanyabiashara hawashirikishwi, hawawakilishwi. Hakuna mtu wao pale awaambie hivi, serikali zetu hizi 5 zimeleta secular mpya. Unakuja kuona notice tu hapo kwamba kuanzia leo hii kitu italipwa hii italipwa hapa, hii itakwenda huku. Hawa viongozi wetu, mawaziri, principal secretaries, directors wanakutana kwenye vikao kule, wanapanga forum fulani, alafu hiyo forum haiwezi kapata mtiririko ukamfikia mtu wa chini, mfanya biashara, muuza duka la kawaida, mfanya nini.
East African Voices will also reveal to you the informal means that traders use to bypass custom officials so as to evade the paying of taxes.
Yes, they are there. Because when you go there in a formal way, they are very expensive. I will not get profit. They will make sure I don't have and even have entered my capital. Why not to go for the informal?
We have simplified processes, actually even outside the secular world, for those smaller traders. You don't need an agent, it's just one single piece of sheet you capture and record and go. So that you make it easier for them to comply with the taxes. Of course, it's very difficult to eliminate because of the very nature of the borders.
Stemming from the rights of the Unified Common Market Protocol that looks into the 4 freedoms, a harmonized tax system is a sure way of preventing tax measures that could otherwise have an effect on the function of the common market arrangement.
Well, we pay around 40 billion a year in our overall taxes, all combined taxes, direct, indirect. And my God, we have all kinds of taxes in this country. More than 30 types of taxes, believe it or not.
The private sector accounts for over 80% of economies of EAC member states. On the program, we pay a close attention to its vital role played by the sector in injecting to the overall economic growth.
All our governments have pronounced very strongly that the private sector in our countries now constitute the engine of growth. And to the extent that the private sector now constitute the engine of growth, then it is important that the private sector becomes a critical participant not just in the integration process, but in the growth process of our economy.
Citizen awareness and participation in the integration agenda form the three-pronged approach to ensuring that the government unlocks the potential of the private sector, who ultimately benefit the unemployed youth. Nonetheless, do these citizens understand the spirit and the letter behind the formation of the community?
East African has given much hope to the region. First of all, curbing terrorism is the biggest thing right now happening. There is a standby force between Rwanda, Kenya, and Uganda. And apart from that, there's also the one tourism visa that's going to help a lot. And then there's also the fact that it's very easy to travel across the borders these days.
Kwa faida ya wananchi ni kuona kama tungetumia sarafu moja Afrika Mashariki na Kati, tuwe tukiingia kule tusisumbuliwe, wala wenyewe wakija huko watasumbuliwe. Tu na soko moja na biashara tunashirikiana kwa pamoja.
Last but not the least, tourism is among the top 3 foreign exchange earners in the economies of the member states. We traveled across Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda and Burundi to capture the appeal these countries have to both local and international tourists. The single tourist visa heralded a new beginning towards marketing the region as one, with the tagline Destination East Africa.
If you look at Kenya, we are rated as the world's leading safari destination. This is according to World Travel Awards. If you look at Uganda, also they have their own unique products, like for example, adventure sports like water rafting, which we also have incidentally here in Kenya, the source of the River Nile, as it is mentioned, and also things to do with culture. And then when you go to Rwanda, they also endowed quite a lot, and especially when you look at the whole perspective of the gorilla tracking and so on, which also cuts across in places like in Uganda and so on. Then if you move on down to Tanzania, again also they have a fairly strong product, and they also have diversity as far as safari is concerned and many other products. So when you look at tourism per se in the whole of East Africa, truly in Africa we are quite endowed as far as the product diversity is concerned, and then again the warmth and the hospitality of the people. If you come to Kenya, go to Rwanda, go to Uganda, go to Burundi, go to Tanzania, there's that unique aspect, and there's a thread that cuts across almost all East African countries. When you talk about tourism, East Africa is the place to think about.
The differences in economic strengths of individual countries has caused a seemingly lack of distrust among the partner states. Take for instance, in its 2013 Inequality in East Africa report, the Society for International Development notes that Burundi is the least unequal country in East Africa, followed by Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya and Rwanda.
There are two types of inequality really, and the inequality that people tend to see most obviously visible is the inequality in people's lifestyles or consumptions, which is a reflection of the inequality in income, what they're earning and what is made up of those earnings. But underlying even that further are the inequalities in opportunities, whether to your inequality in terms of the health or the education, or even the location or gender or disability. All of these things have an impact in your or in one's ability to earn an income, a decent income or not, and therefore live a decent life or not, or a life of excess.
Burundi's per capita income stands at $271 compared to Kenya's at $808. We pose a question: does Burundi identify itself as an equal member of the community?
This is an interesting question. Burundi really believes in East Africa. And if you see that the effort that per people are doing on our program, on the language, for example, you wouldn't believe it. Because people are not used, to changing their, their habits. But with that program, they have now started, think differently. We really feel that we are East Africans. At least I am deeply convinced from the bottom of my heart that we really have made the right choice of integrating into EAC.
Tanzania's business community added its voice to the concerns.
The level of bureaucracy in Tanzania perhaps is much, much higher than compared to the rest of our neighbors in the EAC. Tanzania decisions take long, they take just too long, and if we really want to move fast as a bloc, we have to be on the same speed. Partners should be able to work for each other. If one partner slows down, then it makes the others slow down.
Trade volumes across the East African community have increased, and this has been attributed to the introduction of common policies by member states. Nonetheless, as cargo transported across the Northern Corridor and Central Corridor lands, police roadblocks and weighbridges are all captured under the non-tariff barriers have been to blame for the rising cases of corruption.
Sana sana Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda roadblocks sio mingi. Mahali kwenye pako roadblocks nyingi ni sehemu za Kenya. Ndio pako roadblocks nyingi. Na sometimes wanatusumbua kidogo. Kama unatembea usiku, wanatusumbua sana. Ndio pako hata unakatwa fine ya pesa nyingi, unafungwa na kufunga na mara nyingi unakuwa hujui utaenda kushitaki wapi, hata wakikunyanyasa huwezi kujua. Na wakati tulikuwa tunafikiri tuko katika East Africa community.
The above are sentiments on the ground of concerned East Africans on whether as a community we have engaged reverse gear on matters that are to be of our benefit. Despite the seemingly doom and gloom picture on the ground, we sought to ask what will be the remedy to ensure that the community lives up to its billing.
The key challenge is to look for competitiveness, aspect of competitiveness between East Africa and the rest of the world. Are we able to compete with the other economies of the world? Now, this competitiveness will be facilitated substantially by the cost of energy.
If I look at the last reports, for COMESA report and DSC reports for 2012, the trade volumes were up 40% in 2 years. I'm not sure any place, even higher than the growth in Europe, higher than the growth in the Middle East. It means that we are interconnected in the region. That's what we should exploit.
We do need that kind of cross-fertilization of talent across the region. Otherwise, all you are integrating goods and maybe services and funds, but the ultimate object of integration, the human, is not being integrated, and that seems to me to be a massively poor strategic outcome of this effort.
And that sums up what East African Voices is about, and we'll embark on tackling in the next couple of weeks. For any businessman, government official, or East African, this is a show you would not want to miss. We'd love to get your feedback. Get us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at EA Voices, or feel free to write to us. Our email address is on your screen. Till same time next week, this has been East African Voices.